Dave and Cynthia, thank you. One of the cool things about having been David's roommate is this is not my first Greenwich Gala. So I knew I was getting up behind Colonel Jacobs, which just made me laugh at zero of those jokes. But Dave and Cynthia, thank you. Thank you for all that you do, and Dave, appreciate the outstanding introduction. I'd also like to thank everyone assembled who assists the children of fallen patriots in their mission. In this noble cause, let's give everyone involved in this process a round of applause. Colonel Jacobs, sir, thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. And I'd like to ask if there are any other Medal of Honor recipients here. We give them all a warm round of applause, sir. Again, thank you. To our Gold Star families, our board members of the Children of Fallen Patriots, fellow service members, veterans, public servants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm both humbled and honored to be here with you tonight and accept the Patriot Award on behalf of every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine whom I've had the privilege to serve with in 36 years of military service. I especially like to thank those who cannot be here with us or their families tonight because they have the watch. So tonight, I stand before you in a spirit of gratitude. As David stated, I'll be promoted to general on Friday, and I realize that I've done none of this alone. I literally stand on the shoulders of giants, my family, my friends, my classmates, and all with whom I've served. And for that, if you had a piece of this, thank you very much. I'm especially grateful for the sacrifice of our service members and their families, especially our Gold Star families, to whom our nation owes a debt of gratitude that can never fully be repaid. I'm grateful for the service and sacrifice of those service members who have gone before us, patriots like my own father, Master Sergeant retired Patrick Clark, a proud Vietnam veteran who served in the United States Army for 28 years. Jack had already asked one time, but I'd ask again. For our veterans and service members who are currently here in attendance, please stand. Let's give them all a round of applause. Now here comes the fun part. I'm grateful for my classmates of the West Point class of 1988. Here we go. Widely regarded as the worst class ever. Not even close. I was on staff and faculty at West Point. The West Point class of 2008 was kind of close. Any 08 graduates in here? Yeah, they're probably all in trouble still. Their class motto, instead of worst class ever, was .08. Because they had so many problems, but they still were not on restriction during graduation week. Thank you very much. No task too great. General Pappas was framed. Okay. And with that, I'd like to also offer that there are two of my classmates here tonight who are previous recipients of the Patriot Award. General Drew Pappas, who's here with his lovely wife, Beth. Drew is a four-star general, commands all of the Army forces in the continental United States. Tremendous. And one of my roommates, Lieutenant General retired Bill Burleson. His lovely wife, Cindy. And Bill and I go way back, all the way to third grade. We will not talk about that. We'll leave it there. But tonight I'd like to also talk about some of my classmates who, many of them are no longer in service, but some served to the limit. Our West Point class produced 24 general officers, which is a pretty good number. The class behind us had 7. My brother from another mother, Rich Clark, also a Patriot Award recipient, and his class had 2. So think about that, 24 general officers in one West Point class. But that's not, in some cases, the most impressive number that our class can throw up. I'd also like to recognize another classmate who's here tonight, John Schwab. John, please stand. John Schwab, please stand. Kelly, I'd like you to stand as well. Stay standing. All right, this is why they're standing. The Schwabs have 8 children. That's worth clapping for. All 8 are serving our armed forces or our nation right now. The Schwabs have 3 sons and 2 daughters who are soldiers. Their son Drew will soon deploy to NATO's eastern flank and take battery command during the deployment. Their son John Michael is stationed in the 25th Infantry Division in Hawaii. Their daughter Marita recently returned from a deployment in the Middle East. Their daughter Bethlehem, who's here with us tonight with her husband Yared, is lined up for company command in the Army Reserve. Their son Clay, who is also with us tonight, is about to deploy to the Middle East here in a few months with the 101st Combat Aviation Brigade. The non-soldiers, their son Abner is a Marine. Hoorah! That's right. I told you that would land, honey. I told you. Hoorah. Their daughter Joanna has the hardest job of all the Schwab children. She's an Army spouse, stationed in Hawaii with her husband James at headquarters U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. And not to be forgotten, the 8th child, their daughter Penny, who's also with us tonight, is a Department of the Army civilian nurse at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Please join me in another round of applause for Team Schwab. I'm so thankful for my classmates, the members of the class of 1988. Our relationships, as David said, span some 40 years, where we first raised our right hand to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies and took our first oath on that day on the plane. You continue to inspire me through your gifts of service to our communities and our nation. I'd like to ask you all, from the no task too great, class of 88, please stand. I'm honored to serve in your ranks and to stand amongst you as my friends. I also ask you to stand so the wait staff cuts off the liquor until after the speech. Shocking. On a more serious note, tonight we celebrate the 15th annual Children of Fallen Patriots Gala, where the foundation has honored an impressive array of military leaders, 2 of which I mentioned already, who have been awarded the Patriot Award, to include Generals Casey, Odierno, Petraeus, Dunford, McChrystal, Thomas, and Rich Clark, Admirals McCraven and Colin Green, and most recently, Sergeant Major of the Army Mike Weimer. However, this is the first time that David Kim has had the courage to invite one of his former roommates to have the opportunity to have the mic in this award ceremony here. And after 4 decades, the statute of limitations is still in place. And plus, like my friend Colin Green, Navy SEAL, told me once, Nothing messes up a good sea story like a witness. And there are 3 of my roommates in this room tonight. So we're just going to call for a ceasefire until next year. But again, tonight we're grateful for the Children of Fallen Patriots' mission to care and to be there for the children of our fallen comrades. The presence of this organization in the lives of our children, of our fallen, holds one of my core beliefs at heart, that there's no stronger human emotion than the feeling to belong to a team, to a group, to a family dedicated to something greater than yourself. So tonight I'd like to share the story of a friend who I believe also held dear the importance of the feeling to belong. He was introduced to you earlier this evening. I'm talking about Lieutenant Colonel Paul J. Finken. Paul is an amazing leader and friend, and tragically, Paul was killed by a roadside bomb near Baghdad, Iraq, on his last combat patrol on a year-long deployment on the 2nd of November, 2006, 18 years ago today. I would best describe Paul through the lens of belonging to something greater than self. The feeling of belonging to his family, to his faith, and to his friends. First, his family. Paul loved his family deeply. He was an incredible husband to his wife and the love of his life, Jackie, an amazing dad to their 3 beautiful daughters, Emily, Caroline, and Julia, who you met up here on stage earlier tonight. Jackie, Emily, and Julia are here with us. Please join me in a round of applause for the Finken family. Paul also has a twin brother, Pete, who he also loved dearly. People are laughing because you know, Jackie, he's a member of the West Point class of '88. Good man. Faith. Paul was a man of great faith. Ironically, today is also All Souls Day, a day where we remember all whom we've loved and have lost. Paul was a man of great faith. He assisted me in my own faith journey. When I made the decision to become confirmed in the Catholic Church, Paul was my sponsor. We attended faith formation classes together in the mornings before PT for 6 months, leading upon Easter Vigil, where I received the sacrament of confirmation. As I said, Paul was a dear friend to many, especially his classmates in the West Point class of '89. But Paul was also a friend and mentor to our son, Matt. Matt was only 13 when we lost Paul, but Paul and Matt shared a special bond because Paul was an Eagle Scout, and he served as Matt's Eagle Scout mentor, helped him with his badge requirements, and helped him with his service project, and Matt earned his Eagle Scout badge while we were deployed to Iraq in 2006. There's no stronger human emotion than the feeling to belong. Paul was my battalion executive officer, and together we formed 1st Battalion, 506th Infantry Regiment in the 101st Airborne Division. In forming the battalion, we became proud descendants of the Currahees of World War II and the fame of the 101st. Their legendary story was captured so well by Stephen Ambrose in the book and HBO series, The Band of Brothers. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he who sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. And our goal was to write our own chapter of Currahee history and to forge a highly skilled, cohesive team of warriors who were fit, disciplined, and motivated leaders of character who would thrive in the crucible of combat and live up to the words of the West Point Cadet Prayer during the darkest hours, that our soldiers would choose in every instance the harder right over the easier wrong. Our band of brothers and sisters deployed to Iraq shortly after Thanksgiving in 2005 and were tested time and time again during the Battle of Ramadi. For those of you familiar with Navy SEAL Jocko Willick's podcast, or you're one of the 3.1 million followers he has on Instagram, Jocko often speaks about the Battle of Ramadi and his service with the 1st of the 506th in what was widely considered at the time one of the most violent and deadly environments where U.S. service members were forward deployed in combat. We found ourselves in a fight with al-Qaeda terrorists in their self-proclaimed center of the Islamic Caliphate. And within minutes of our arrival at Camp Corregidor in Ramadi, we remained engaged in daily direct fire contact, door to door and house to house, for nearly 4 months before suffering our first casualties in Ramadi on the night of 13 March 2006. That fateful night, we lost Sergeant Marco Silva of Alva, Florida, and Sergeant Corey Dan of Norway, Maine. Marco Silva had 2 young children, and Corey Dan, much like Delaney Gibbs, whose daughter was the inspiration for the Children of Fallen Patriots Foundation, Corey left behind a daughter he never met as she was born after we deployed to Iraq. The story of heroism that follows is a testament to the legacy of Paul Finken and the establishment of trust between leaders and those they lead, especially for those privileged to lead our sons and daughters in combat. This is a story about the courage of 2 young officers, 2 lieutenants who were not much older at the time than the scholars we honored here tonight. On that night of 13 March 2006, at the site of the improvised explosive device that killed Sergeant Corey Dan and severely wounded 3 of his teammates, a Currahee soldier identified and traced the command wire that detonated the IED to a peephole in the wall of an adjacent building. Upon investigation of the hole in the wall, the soldier encountered the trigger man. The individual who had initiated the IED was inside the hole in the wall. The leaders on the ground, these 2 young lieutenants, whose names I will protect because they both recently gave up battalion command, they're lieutenant colonels in our formations right now, made the bold decision to lead their soldiers into the building to capture this trigger man. They entered the building and cleared the room where they suspected that the man had been, but they couldn't find him. So they went back outside, looked in the hole again, and he was still there. So when they went back into the room a second time, they realized that the room was too small. The trigger man was hidden behind a false wall inside the room to trigger that IED in that space for the sole purpose of killing us. So the soldiers at the time who were on the ground went to their vehicles, retrieved picks and axes, and started to chop down the wall to get at this individual. But before they had a hole big enough to pull the man through or to go in to get him, the 2 lieutenants backed all of the soldiers out of the building and went inside themselves to capture the man. As they expected, the man decided to fight, and he made several desperate yet unsuccessful attempts with a large knife to stab or slash the lieutenants. They reacted swiftly, they disarmed the man, and took him into custody without the use of lethal force. I arrived on the scene shortly after they secured this man, and I asked the lieutenants, "What made you evacuate the building and choose to confront the trigger man yourselves?" They responded that their soldiers were emotionally charged. There was a lot of adrenaline associated with the actions of that individual who potentially killed their comrade. So they believed that exposing themselves to the risk posed by that assailant safeguarded their soldiers from potential injury or death. They correctly assessed that the man would choose to fight or die and potentially initiate a suicide vest or use grenades. So I asked them, why did you choose not to use lethal force? Given the actions of the combatant, they clearly had the authority to do so. They calmly answered lethal force was unnecessary and would have set the wrong example for their subordinates. Those actions would not have been aligned with the ethos of the Currahees, because our intent was to fight the right way, with integrity and with honor. Their efforts to capture this trigger man resulted in him later providing valuable information on enemy locations, tactics, and networks that facilitated our future mission success and ultimately saved lives in combat. So let's fast forward to a couple of weeks ago. I happened to be at Fort Campbell, and I met with Lieutenant Colonel Gerard Phillip, an officer who I've known for several years. Gerard just happens to command the 1st of the 506th. He shared with me that the legacy of excellence in that battalion that Paul Finken established as the XO continues to live on. That his soldiers, his Currahees, fulfill Paul's promise to build, educate, train, and inspire a unit, a family, with the collective sense of belonging to something greater than themselves. Their band of brothers and sisters who are dedicated to a mission, a purpose, and a calling greater than self. Tonight, we met Julia Finken up here. As David said, and Cynthia also echoed, Julia's not only here as a Children of Fallen Patriots graduate, but now works for the foundation to also fulfill her father's promise, to inspire in other Gold Star children the feeling to belong. In closing, I'd like to offer a quote from Sir Winston Churchill. All the greatest things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word. Freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, hope. To everyone in this room tonight, thank you for your support of the greatest simple things. Thank you for your continued support of the children of our fallen. May God continue to bless our troops and their families, especially those deployed in harm's way tonight, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.